to the final episode of, or not the final episode ever, but the final episode of 2021 of the Blood Brothers podcast.
I was wondering what you were leading us into then, Chris.
Yeah, big announcement without showing.
Yeah, I know. Did I miss the memo?
A surprise twist.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, not ever. Hopefully that won't ever come, but of the year. I'm joined tonight by Rob Parker.
Hello there.
And in our guest seat, we are so lucky to have the wonderful Sarah Hilary. Hello.
Hello, it's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure.
I mean, you've written so many great books, but we're here tonight predominantly to talk about Fragile. It's coming out on paperback soon?
20th of January.
Lovely.
So yeah, soon, very soon, really, isn't it?
So people can save their Christmas vouchers to buy the paperback? Yes,
or splash out on the hardback right now. I'm not going to stop anybody doing that.
Yes, why wait, folks? Why wait?
It's a lovely Christmas present, easier to wrap in some way than a paperback. I've just been doing my Christmas wrapping, so I've been obsessed with what's easier to wrap, a softback or the hardest ones are the slippery paperbacks. Hardback's definitely easier to wrap. Sorry, off piece.
No, these are very important tips for this time of year, I think, listeners.
Please, can you start by telling the listeners, if they haven't read it yet, a little bit about Fragile?
Sure. So Fragile, I was thinking about how the best way to describe it on a program like this, as opposed to that elevator pitch, the really short one that you have to do. The elevator pitch, if anyone's interested, is Rebecca meets The Handmaid's Tale. But that doesn't really, explain, obviously, the book in any detail. So the best way I found to describe it was that it's a book about searching. So it's a book about people who are looking for something or someone and finding possibly something else. So the book opens with my young heroine, Nell Ballard, finding herself on this street in modern day London, but she's about to enter this very thin, very narrow, very mysterious old house that could really, be a doorway into the past or into a parallel universe. It's so odd, the world that she enters when she enters Starling Villas. And she is searching for a young man that she's lost, but she's about to find an older man who, is not what he appears to be. And she inveigles her way into his house and takes a job as a housekeeper there. He's very mysterious. He's very reclusive. He's a little bit eccentric. He lives by this book of very controlling, very emphatic rules, and he expects her to live by the same standards. But very quickly it becomes clear to the reader, if not to Dr. Robin Wilder, Nell's employer, that there's more to Nell than meets the eye. And in particular, there's a secret that she's hiding, almost even from herself, and certainly from Robin. And then to make matters even worse, shortly after that, Dr. Wilder's estranged and rather awful former wife, Carolyn, sweeps into Starling Villas, and then the whole thing becomes a sort of power play regarding who is actually in control in the house and who is going to get what they want from whom, and who, what are these people really after from one another and from themselves.
Blimey. I love how the elevator pitch I was in, and then the expanded version of the pitch. It was a bit like when you get to the expanded universe. I got the full treatment there. That's wonderful. What can we ask about? I've been interested recently about. You mentioned there Nell having a dark secret, and obviously determined never to give away spoilers on air because that's not what we do over here. But what do you think it is about secrets that just keep readers wanting more, and we're all readers, what is it about secrets that is just so compelling, do you think?
Well, I think in terms of purely in terms of a book, I've been doing a little bit of teaching and mentoring just lately, and the big thing that I'm always saying to the aspiring writers, and I'm learning a lot myself, even after 8 books, I'm still learning, is that certainly the beginning of the book, and arguably most of the book is about making the reader want the answers to questions that you are withholding from them. So there's a secret. A book is naturally secretive, I think, because if everything was spelled out in the first 2 chapters, why would you keep reading?
Yes,
so,
that's such a great answer.
Yeah, and you just have to keep, and if you give them an answer to one of their questions, then you have to immediately replace it with a new question. Because again, you don't want them going, yes, of course, that's the answer, close the book. You've got to keep them reading forward. So I think all books contain that aspect to them. And I think also I defy anyone who tells you they haven't got a secret. I think you'll find I think we all have secrets, don't we? Even if it's some silly little thing, we've all got something that we would rather not. And they make game shows out of this, don't they? And they make, endless TV shows about how you can find out who's lying to you, all of those good things. And I just think it's readers are also inquisitive anyway. And so if someone has got a secret, they'd quite like to find out what it is. We're quite nosy, I think, as human beings, and certainly as readers of crime fiction.
That's one of the greatest ever answers to that question, I think, because I love that. Chris, if you ever hear me on a future episode saying, well, of course, every book itself is a secret, remind me to credit the wonderful Sarah Hilary on that, please. I can't tell you how many times I'm going to be thinking about that now.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You said something really interesting in your sort of description of Fragile, about it being modern London. And when I was reading it at the start, especially, it's sort of, I didn't know when it was set until I think you mentioned a cafe. Was that intentional to sort of have that not obvious right from the start?
Yeah. So part of my feeling about the story when I first had the first ideas for Fragile was that it was like one of those modern fairy tales. I mean, I'm obsessed with fairy tales and with Greek myths, and and the ways in which modern stories become retellings of myths, or the way we're constantly retelling those heroic quest stories. So in that sense, yes, it could take place in any time. Yes. I think there's one point in the book where a mobile phone is referred to, but apart from that, I just love. It's so nice in some ways to step aside from a modern police series in which you're constantly thinking about, is this possible? What's the technology? How many CCTV? I mean, I now know how many CCTV cameras there are. At one time I did in London, because I researched it for one of the Marnie books. And I think I discovered there's more CCTV in London than there is in the whole of the rest of Europe put together.
Wow.
Europe?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Wow.
Or it might be European cities, but it's certainly something extraordinary. We have so many, and most of them don't work, which is a great gift to a crime fiction writer. But anyway, that's so I was sort of used to dealing in that kind of research and that kind of information. It was so nice to decide I was going to write a book in which I didn't once have to stop, go and look online to work out what the Crown Prosecution Service thought, what the statistics were, or and just to write a story that could exist in its own universe. And I think really Starlingford, what happens inside the house is almost like its own contained universe. It's got its own rules.
Yeah.
And the house is a sort of character in its own right, all of those good things. So that you feel, and it's like the TARDIS because it's tiny and it's slim. And if you step to one side of the front door, you can't see it anymore because it's so narrow. So there's all kinds of references to fairy tales and to other genres, and that I love, and things that I grew up with as well. So lots of Easter eggs if you want to find them in the book. But it also needed to feel like a real story that could happen now. I think that's important too. I didn't want it to feel like a fantasy novel. It needed to feel like a modern psychological thriller in that respect.
And it very much did.
That word you used there, Sarah, liberating. It must have been so. That makes me suggest to me that there was a fun element to writing this. Did you enjoy the writing process on this one?
I did, yes. I mean, I always enjoy the first draft of anything I write because I don't plot. And so that's when the story comes to you. That's when the characters, do surprising things. And certainly Nell did a lot of surprising things in this book that if I'd sat down and plotted it, I wouldn't have created a young woman who would have been so unusual, I don't think. It was because of the way she reacted in situations I put her in. But yes, there was definitely a sense of freedom in that I didn't need to go. The story came entirely from my imagination. There was no retrofitting of research to see whether, the statistically these things could happen or judicially these things would happen. So it was, I really enjoyed it. And typically with me, it's always the case. I really enjoy writing the villains. So the story is mostly told in first person by Nell, but every other chapter there is a mad old angry Northern Welsh woman who is on, is seeking a retribution against Nell, her former foster mother, Megan Flack. And I enjoyed writing her hugely. I enjoyed her northernness. I enjoyed her kind of bitterness and her honesty. Nell is very young. She's only 18, and she lives in a sort of fantasy world to some extent, a little bit like the second Mrs. De Winter in Rebecca, a little bit like Jane Eyre. She's not quite of this world, whereas Megan is so of this world. She tells it like it is. She's completely unvarnished. So she serves a very important purpose in the plot, because when Megan tells you something, there's no frills or fancy about it. You know that that's what you're getting. So in actual fact, she's the sort of anchor to the story, even though she's a rotten, bitter, twisted old boot. But no, I loved writing Megan. I must admit, but I'm awful like that. I always love writing the villains, much more than the heroes. I think actually, I say I'm awful like that. I bet most crime writers would admit to that. I bet Thomas Harris bloody loved writing Hannibal Lecter. He must have done, mustn't he, to have written so many books about him. But
yeah, speaking of liberating, he didn't really keep the gloves on at any point during writing the Hannibal Lecter moments, did he? Really?
No.
Can I ask why a standalone now?
Well, partly because I had discovered a sort of resting place for the Marnie series. Over the course of the 6 books, Marnie had been on this quest to try and find out why her foster brother Stephen had done the terrible thing he did off page at the beginning of the series, which was to murder her parents when he was 14, and he's been in prison ever since, and she's been sort of driven to go and visit him to try and find out from him why he did what he did, even though as a detective she probably had a pretty good idea that he didn't know why he did what he did, that it wasn't it was a crime, a senseless crime. So there was a way in which I could see that finally in Never Be Broken, that that story arc was sort of going to come to a rest, and not before time. I think most readers would agree. There's only so long you can play with an idea like that before it just becomes really annoying to the reader. And then probably the other and rather more serious reason was because it was a very hard book to write, Never Be Broken. It was, when I started writing Someone Else's Skin, probably back in 2013, I made the decision that I was going to have Marnie's sidekick was going to be DS Noah Jake, who is gay, who is black, who is serving in the Metropolitan Police. And it wasn't going to be a book about homophobia or racism. It was going to be a book about a young man who's very happy in his own skin. He's got the only one in the whole book who's got a happy home life. And that's what I wanted to do with Noah. But by the time I got to Never Be Broken, post-Brexit, London and the Metropolitan Police are very different entities now. And I had always tried to write very honestly about policing and London and crime. It's important to me that the stories felt truthful. And I just thought I can't write this book and pretend that London is the same as it was in 2013, because all of my friends, including my gay friends and my black friends, were telling me it's not the same. You know, it had fundamentally changed. And so it was a very difficult book to write in a way that, you know, I didn't just want to write an angry book, which is in some ways what I felt like writing. I didn't just want to write a miserable book. But it was very, you know, at the same time, I didn't want to write a book that pretended that London hadn't changed. And I always feel in a series, it's really important that the characters change. You know, they should change within one book, and they should certainly change over the course of 6 books, especially if they are working in the police, because, and they're murder detectives, that stuff changes you. You know, you're not going to be the same person that you were. So it was hard. It was hard to write Never Be Broken. I'm really pleased with it. I think it's I felt like I did a good job of delivering an honest reaction to that situation. But it was quite nice to think, now I'm going to put that to rest. So I'm going to, you know, apart from anything else, the characters need a bit of a rest, and they can have and then I'd had this idea for a standalone, and I've had ideas for other standalones since, and so and talking to some other crime writers actually as well. I remember talking to Mick Heron, and he was saying that he took a break from his brilliant Slough House series in order to write a standalone, and then when he went back to Jackson Lamb and his amazing cast of characters, you know, he went back with really new vigor and really keen to get back to them fresh out. Felt really refreshed, you know, for that break that he'd taken. And so that sounded to me like as good a reason as any, you know, to take a break from writing a series and to do some standalones. So yeah, here is where I am.
That's brilliant. And that brings up what you were saying about the police changing over that time and your exploration of that. That brings up that notion, I think, that we all enjoy about crime fiction, is that it can hold up a mirror to society so well. I feel crime fiction, because you can explore, you know, exciting stories and thrilling moments and justice and things like that, while you can do things like comment socially on things with this, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes readers don't like it, to be clear, when you do that. I remember somebody being quite cross with a speech that Noah has in Never Be Broken, where he talks about people that voted the right and the wrong way for the Brexit vote, and I did get it wasn't directly personally at me, but it was a comment about the book where they said, you know, I didn't know there was a wrong way to vote. I believe that, you know, my vote is my own business, and you know, they're right in one sense. They are right. You know, you vote, you live with the consequences of how you voted. But in the context of the book, clearly, you know, Noah wasn't going to say that there was a right way to vote for something that has, you know, caused such catastrophe for his life and the life of his loved ones. So it was odd, but it definitely ruffled a few feathers when people don't like to be preached at, which is fair enough. I don't like to be preached at. And if you see the author's opinions too much on the author should always be invisible. You should never hear the author's voice, you know. It's just, and sometimes I've read a few books where it's suddenly shoehorned in. There's suddenly some little polemic that the author wants to say, and sometimes it's successfully put into the mouth of a character, and other times it's just kind of appended without any apparent sort of, and then it takes you out of the story, because I think it was a difficult one, but it was but yes, I think you're absolutely right about it holding a mirror up to society, and that was my challenge, because I always felt that I'd always really enjoyed writing about London. I haven't lived there recently, but I did live there for sort of 13, 14 years. And, you know, I love the fact that London is all these layers. And I love the fact that London is all these villages, you know, but it is a different place now, you know, unfortunately. And again, since then, you know, since pandemic with a capital P, you know, it's different again. So it was quite nice to be able to write a book that didn't rely on holding up a mirror to physical London, if you like, but rather holding a mirror up to our inner lives, you know, and that whole idea of what goes on behind closed doors, and the sign, and you know, it went deep this book, I think, rather than White. That allowed me to sidestep some of the issues that I'd been having to tackle head on in the Marnie series.
That's brilliant. And I think that raises another really interesting discussion point. Sorry, Chris, I've just, when the conversation is just really sparking things off in my head here, is that, and it's something that we talked about recently, Chris, where sometimes I think, and I'm guilty of this as a reader as well, of mixing up sometimes a character's voice from the author's voice, so that's happened. I think I got a bit of a telling off recently for someone, saying, you can't say that. And I said, well, it was the character saying that. And in your instance there, Sarah, that was Noah saying that. It wasn't you saying that.
No, exactly. And I think, I'm fortunately, given how many horrible characters there are in my books, I haven't ever had somebody saying, so you think this, do you? Because there are, in Never Be Broken, there's an absolutely vile, furious, racist character who, Noah runs into. And, I would hate somebody to turn around and say, so that's what you think, is it? It seems to me almost inconceivable that a reader would think that. Yes. But it does happen. You're right, it does happen. And people do make that mistake that they, it's an odd one. It doesn't happen. I'm lucky. It hasn't happened to me. But I haven't written that many books, so give it time. I'm sure sooner or later. So this Megan Flack is obviously based on you, isn't it? I do remember when Someone Else's Skin came out. I do remember people saying, "Oh, you must have had a very dark life, Sarah." And my poor mother, her neighbour came round and said, "So, this book Sarah's written, it's really very dark, isn't it? What was her childhood like then? Because you grew up in this house, didn't you? That you're still." And my poor mother, and that was particularly funny because I wouldn't be writing those kinds of books if I'd had a horrible, unsafe, miserable childhood. The reason I'm not able to write books like that is because I didn't, But it is funny how people do sometimes assume that your books must be autobiographical, which is always odd to me. I don't know whether it stems from that whole write what you know. But one thing I haven't had, which I live in hope of someone doing, is I have heard about this thing where people become convinced that they're the character in a person's book. So friends of a writer, acquaintances of a writer will go, "This is me, isn't it?" Or "I know who this is," and it isn't. But how do you tell someone that it isn't them if they've decided?
Yeah, it's so strange that I think because I think we're probably all on the same page. I think in that it's just too risky to write about anyone, isn't it? You never do it.
Yeah, but it is a funny one, isn't it? If someone has convinced themselves that they are the character. Yeah, I'd love to think that Ian Fleming had a neighbour that was like, "Oh, this James Bond is that?" It is, isn't it?
I think there's an idea for a thriller in here. Yeah. There is an idea for a thriller in here. Someone who takes it way too far.
Yeah.
Show-esque.
Yeah, it is a little bit like.
I love the idea of the author being like, "No, it's definitely not you," and then it's like they get a new car on the same day as their neighbour. Like, oh, We also like that, what we were saying before about where people's lines are in terms of what triggers something in them as well. You were mentioning about how certain terrible things happen, but the line is never there. But tell people how to express their vote. Yeah. Oh, no, there's the line there. Can't do that. Yeah. I find that interesting.
Yeah, the killing of an animal.
Yes. Oh gosh, you can kill as many people as you want, but do not harm the cat.
I know. I remember thinking one of the boldest things I ever saw the French TV series Spiral do was when they shot a dog. Yeah, I shall whisper when I say it.
Yeah, you did. You whispered.
So shocking. But yeah, I think that's, because people will write letters of complaint, they will. But it is, and it always happens in the context of multiple murders, bodies piling. It's never like the only crime that's happened in the book. It's always.
Oh gosh, of course, yeah. I remember speaking with another author whose name I won't mention because this was their debut, and I remember being very excited about their debut coming out. It was a few years ago now, and on the morning of it coming out, the first review that hit Amazon was a 1-star. A cat dies in this book thing, and someone had read an early proof. Yeah. And saved up all this rage about it, and it was a couple of 100 words they'd written about this. And on the morning of publication, this thing hitting, it was crippling to the author. I remember,
the lesson learned the hard way there.
Yeah, it was so sad. Mercifully, it's not affected anything, and this person is doing amazing at the moment. So
that's really good.
It is great. Yeah. And then I remember speaking to Will Carver about a cat perishing in one of his books, and he just said, the cat had to go.
In the chapter
different
before,
schools of thoughts.
Yeah. He said in the chapter before, a child dies. So which one?
Yeah.
Why the cat?
It's extraordinary, isn't it?
It really is.
Yes, it's as if the cats and dogs are realer somehow.
Yeah. Yes,
they can get the idea that you've invented the characters and they aren't real. Yeah. But the cats and the dogs are somehow,
strong feelings.
Yeah. They're granted more weight somehow. I don't understand.
But you're right. It's one of those lines, isn't it? Everyone's lines are different, but there does seem to be a bit of a universal when it comes to animals, doesn't it? And there's a hierarchy as well. If you kill a bird, that's not as bad.
No.
Or a horse, you can put its head in whoever's bed you like. No one ever complains about that, do they? But touch a hair on a cat's head.
So what we're saying is I can keep the amazing horse-drawn battle where in the next book where a load of birds get murdered. That's what we're saying. Yeah. I can't think of what on earth I would be writing for that to actually happen.
But it's good. I want to read it.
Yes, I do too.
Sarah, you were credited when we spoke to Sharon Bolton about we talked about sort of getting to a sticky bit in the plot and not knowing, and you... Yeah. Well, she told us that you said you write 20 things that could possibly happen. Is that right?
Well, you see, I don't remember saying that. But it's brilliant, isn't it? So I'm definitely going to claim it as it must just be one of the things that I forgot. And it's very good because I wrote it down when I heard it. Yeah. So I thought, that's, but yeah, I think that is quite a nice one, isn't it? It's just make a list. There definitely has to be, if there's 20 of them, there has to be some mad things on there, doesn't there? Yeah,
it was one of the greatest pieces of advice I think I'd heard. Yeah. It was because it immediately. Well, yes, but it just unlocked the door. But it didn't just so much unlock it; it blows the door right off.
That is one of the things that could happen. You see, everything. A bomb explodes.
Yes,
yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Or a cat walks in and everyone
mustn't kill it.
One person gets a And then, so linking that back to what you said about not planning, how much do you have in your head? Is it literally a start and then that's it, or do you have an end point and what happens in between is what happens?
So it differs from book to book. So with Someone Else's Skin, for instance, I knew the big flip moment in the middle of the book, but I didn't know the ending. Whereas with Fragile, I knew the ending, and it's the only time this has ever happened to me when I've written a book. I wrote the ending really early on in the writing process, which I never do because I don't plot and I don't always know how the story is going to end. But with this one, I think it might have been that I got a little bit stuck, maybe usually around that 30,000 word mark. When you've written too much to bin it, but the hard work is still yet to be done. So it's always a bit of a problematic time, isn't it? And I think maybe I wrote the ending scenes because it was about the emotional ending of the book. It was about the feeling I wanted the reader to have when they closed the book. And I thought if I understood that, it would help me to unlock this bit of block that I had about exactly how the characters were behaving towards one another. And it worked. And that was the only bit of the book that didn't fundamentally change in all the many rewrites that I did to it. I mean, guys, if you knew how many times I rewrote the opening of the book, I'm not a great rewriter usually, but I finessed the hell out of this thing, and then it just got cut because unlikely, but actually in the paperback, it appears as a deleted scene in the back of the paperback. And I've done like a director's cut. So I've done like a sort of like, here's how I thought the book was going to begin. And it's there, verbatim on the page. And then I dissect it and go, explain the reasons what I was trying to achieve with it and why it didn't actually work as the beginning of the book and why it was right that it had to go. It was a really interesting exercise. And I think every book should have a director's cut or a deleted scene in the back of it, because it was really, well, I don't know, maybe readers will find it very boring, but for me it was a really interesting thing to dissect it, to unpack what it was about that scene that at the time felt so right, but actually ultimately it wasn't.
That's amazing. As if you need another reason to buy the paperback.
Hey? There you go. Yeah. Listen, why don't you just buy the hardback and the paperback?
I think you should, because then I think that's a very good. I like your style, Rob.
And please, can I ask about because your debut won the Theakston's Crime Book of the Year. Please, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to publication?
Yeah, so it was long and torturous, I think, in common with many authors. Yeah. So I've been writing since I could, hold a pen, really. Used to write the most awful, I thought they were brilliant at the time, of course, unconsciously homoerotic spy stories for my sister when I was about 11, 12. And I loved writing. I would write anything. I was writing Sherlock Holmes fan fiction when I was about 10 for my English teacher, who liked it very much, I have to say. So it was. And then I didn't try writing anything. In my 20s, as you do, you get a job and you're concentrating on that. So I wrote a few things when I first lived in London. And then I was just too busy. I didn't write much at all. And then I got back into it seriously in my sort of mid 30s. And then I thought I'd for a long time, I'd always loved reading crime and horror, actually, crime and sort of ghost stories, Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of thing. So it was dark stuff. And a friend of mine just said, you should write crime fiction. That's where the money is. My excellent friend said to me. And I said, I can't plot, and she was like, well, what's plotting anyway? It's just a series of coat hangers that you hang the story off, that's what it is. And and I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a go. So I gave it a go, and the first one was so bad, guys. I can't, I'm so glad it came under the bed. Never saw the light. Well, unfortunately, it was seen by an agent who was very kind about it, and said that I could write, but this was not the book. I think it was like a pick and mix crime. It had everything in it. It had some thriller. It had a car chase. It had, it was a first go. It was a first bash. And then I wrote another one and another one. And I think it was on about third or fourth full manuscript. Each time I was asked to submit the full manuscript, which was encouraging. And each time I got back a really, thorough 2 or 3 pages of reasons why it showed promise, but it wasn't right. So after I'd, lain on the floor crying for a while, I'd pick myself up and I would write another one. So that was eventually it got the author, the agent that I wanted. I'd set my sights fairly early on, I wanted Jane Gregory, I wanted Val McDermott's agent, just dream big, Sarah, and actually she was, her in-house editor was the one who was giving me the encouraging feedback, so I thought, well, I'll narrow my focus, and I'm quite bloody minded, which I'm sure is actually, one of the big differences between people that are worthy of being published and those who finally get published, because it's so easy to give up. Yeah. There's so many times when you can give up, you should give up, it feels like, for the good of your own health. But I didn't, and I'm really glad that I didn't. So then I submitted Someone Else's Skin. Didn't get the greatest reader report back, actually, from my agent. It was a bit kind of, what do you think? Do you want to work on this? Here are some thoughts. And so I I worked on it. I slammed through it that summer, and then it went. They said, okay, now we're gonna send it out, and not that long after that, it started getting offers, which was really nice, and then it went to auction, which was even nicer, and it was great because it was going to be published, and that was the most exciting thing. And I never in a million years thought it would win the Theakstons Crime Novel of the Year, because I've been going to Harrogate, for some years before I'd ever got an agent, before I ever had a book deal, attending those ceremonies, and so I just concentrated. I didn't want to make a fool of myself when I got up on the stage and talked to Mark Lawson. I was so convinced I was going to do something stupid like trip over my own feet or forget the title of my own book or my characters, and corpse on stage. And so when I finally got down off the stage as one of the shortlisted authors, I had a real kind of adrenaline drain. I just sat down in my chair and thought, thank goodness that's over. And now I can cheer Peter. I thought Peter May was going to win. But there were so many people that were I think I was on the shortlist with Belinda Bauer, and Denise Mina, and all my heroes. Ian Rankin was on the long list that year, and so it seemed ridiculous to me that I just couldn't believe that I was on the shortlist. And then when it won, that was bonkers. I had to get back up on the stage at that point, feeling very strange. And you have to stand there and hold the barrel, and they're very heavy, those things. Solid piece of wood. And I was thinking, if I drop this on Mark Lawson's feet, it's not going to be. So I managed not to. At the end of the evening, I had these marks across my arms where I've been holding this thing. And then eventually, I went back up to the room where my son was. He hadn't come down for the evening. He'd stayed in the hotel room, but he was with me. I came in. It must have been about 11 o'clock at night by that point, So I came into our room with this barrel, and he went, "What have you done?" And told me afterwards he thought I'd got drunk and nicked it, which is a lovely story.
It really is.
I'll have that. But yeah, so that was a lovely moment. But the whole thing just had this sort of surreal feel to it. It was. But one of the nicest things about the crime fiction community is the way that they welcome new authors. I know Val makes a joke about this at her Fresh Blood panel every year, that, should she really be encouraging these upstarts? Should she really be giving them a platform? But actually, we love. There's nothing better than finding a new writer. It's because we're all readers. There's nothing better than discovering a new writer, is there?
And also, we know ourselves as well as readers. We know we'll read anything and everything. Yeah. So there isn't competition.
No. And we all were given a leg up, weren't we? I think the first person to blurb someone else's skin was Mark Billingham, and then Erin Kelly gave me the most amazing quote for it. And then loads of other people as well. But, you don't forget that stuff, and so when, there's somebody, I was lucky enough to mentor Nardine Matheson, whose Jigsaw Man came out this year. And that's, an amazing book. And it was it's really exciting to see new writers coming up. And it's a great pleasure to read, and a privilege to read somebody else's book and, support their career at the beginning. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. Did you know that Nadine's book was going to be that great?
As soon as I started reading it, I could tell that she had, she'd got it.
So great.
And it's such an exciting feeling. I'm doing quite a lot of mentoring and teaching for Curtis Brown at the moment. And when you find one of them. I won't give you guys any spoilers, but there was one I read last week, and it was like, oh my God, it wasn't. I wish I'd had that idea, because it was unique. This guy has to write this book. It wasn't like, oh, I wish I'd had that idea, but it was, I wish I could read this book. He has to finish it. I've got to read it now. And that's it's almost more exciting than writing our own books, isn't it? Really, discovering somebody new. It is exciting writing our own books, but then there's always the fear that we're going to cock it up. Whereas with someone else's, it's like that their fear is their business. I just want to read their amazing book at the end of it.
Yeah, that's it. I love that. There's a pure joy in discovery always with picking up something new or hearing about something new, and I love hearing what like friends are working on and stuff like that. I get really excited, and then I get excited for them, of what that might mean for them, in future and that kind of thing. I always get really excited about it. And it's I saw this online this week, Sarah, but it's with Curtis Brown Creative, is that right? Yes. The course that you're doing. I mean, what a wonderful thing. Can I get on this course? It sounds great.
Yeah, I think it should be really good fun. I've been a guest editor on Erin Kelly's psychological thriller course for Curtis Brown Creative for just over a year. And it works brilliantly. So it's online, and people come together in a forum. All the students come together, they critique each other's work, they support one another. It's fantastic. But this course is going to also include some Zoom tutorials, which are part of the course I'm doing at the moment, but they come at the end of it and they're individual ones. Whereas this is going to be a series of workshops. It's going to be online sessions. It's going to be 15 handpicked students. So you'll have to submit your work, and the Curtis Brown team decide which 15 they're going to put forward. And then we're going to be talking about all kinds of interesting things, like how important openings are, and how to line up the suspects, and the difference between surprise and suspense, and how you can use your dreaded synopsis actually as a plotting tool. It's the nearest I come to plotting is actually with a synopsis. I learned not to fear the synopsis, which was, I think, one of my biggest accomplishments as a writer, I feel, was to just no longer be afraid of the synopsis. But so I'm really looking forward to it. It starts in March, I think. So any aspiring writers out there, go and check it out on the Curtis Brown site, and maybe I'll see some of you over there in the spring.
Yeah, and me and Chris on the front row, like.
Fabulous.
Sounds absolutely amazing. Yeah, really, really does.
There's a Twitter question from Gordon, who runs Grab This Book.
Yes, lovely Gordon.
Oh, hey, Gordon.
Amazing man. His Decades features class.
Yeah.
He would like to know what's coming next. So is there more Marnie in the pipeline, or are we going to be treated to more standalones?
So I definitely have at least 2 more standalones, and they will be what I'll be working on next. Mm-hmm. I've not ruled out writing any more Marnie ever. I was very careful not to, around my way, it's known as doing a Blake 7, where you murder everybody at the end, so that it's very difficult to bring them back. Yeah. Although if you're cunning, like the Matrix, you can manage it. But yeah, so I deliberately left it open, and that's not a spoiler. You can still read Never Be Broken and not, think that's a spoiler. But and I feel, I do wonder from time to time how they're doing. Nowhere in particular, they do come into my head quite often. And I just hope that they're, doing okay, Marnie and Noah and the rest of the gang. But no, the next things that I'm working on are standalones, because I got a bit of the itch for the standalone. I like that whole the fact that you've got to get it right within your allotted 100,000 words. You can't just leave some stuff that you'll deal with in a later book in the series. You've got to tell that complete story. You've got to take readers on that journey. And it is a very different discipline. And it was very scary, actually, sitting down and writing Fragile, because I didn't know any of these characters. And for the last 5 books that I had written, I knew these characters. I knew them almost inside out. I mean, not Marnie so much, because she's very secretive. But certainly I felt that I knew roughly how they were going to react to things. But part of the excitement of writing a standalone is that you don't know. You don't know how they're going to behave, and you don't know there is something, we come back to that word liberating. There is something both terrifying but also liberating about that. So yeah, the next, what I'm working on next is it's a story set on the cliffs in Cornwall, and it's a story about a failed paradise project, a housing development that turns into a living nightmare for the families that are caught up in it. And I'm enjoying it very much. It's another one where people are keeping secrets, but it's also a sort of in adversity, a story of survival and how we react in extremis, which is something that's always fascinated me. It's how people behave when times are really bad. What are we all capable of? Will we be heroes, or will we be villains? And I love that.
Yeah, what a great sell.
Sounds amazing. Is there any title for this?
I'm holding on to the title at the moment because it's in flux at the moment, but I hope to be able to say more about it soon.
Cool. So I tried, Chris.
And
with you just mentioned standalones there, but just going slightly sideways. You featured in one of the most blockbuster collections of short stories ever, the Exit Wounds collection, with the story The Picture. I mean, that would just have been amazing.
Yeah, that was really good. It's lovely to write short stories. I wrote a lot of them before I ever wrote the. It was one of the things I did when I was trying to get published. I wrote a lot of flash fiction, which I love. Really, really short stories, and I had a bit of success with some of those. And I love short stories, but they're hard to write. It's hard to write a good short story. I don't know who it was who said it, but somebody said the reason I write novels is because I don't have the time to write short stories. And I think there is so much truth in that. To write, I mean, I'm sure we could all write a bad short story. God knows I've written some. But I think the art of writing a really good short story, I mean, no word can be wasted. It's such a discipline, and I'm hugely admiring of people that pull it off successfully. And at one time, I used to review a lot of short story collections, and I miss writing them. Actually, I haven't written one since the Exit Wounds one. I've written quite a lot. I've written enough before then to make a little collection of them myself, but not enough of them were crime ones. It's a very, very specific discipline, but I do love reading them as well. A great short story is, such a pleasure, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Chris, I felt like I interrupted you there, Chris. I'm sorry.
You're fine. No, that was a really lovely thing to hear. I was just going to introduce our game. Are you up for a game, Sarah?
Oh, is this the game is this the sweating blood gauntlet reference that was made on Twitter? Yes, I'm up to this, definitely.
Well, I've gone back. Usually, what we do is and it's different for this and it's sort of inverted because you've just talked about at the start about liking classics, and it sort of links into this. So it's like I planned it, but I haven't. Usually, what we do is I look at someone who's reviewed your book unfavorably, look at what else they've reviewed, and then you have to guess whether they liked it better than your book or not. But I've gone back to the old way. What we used to do was find a review of a book, and you have to guess what book it is. So I've gone back, Rob, to the original just for the end.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
so they're all classics.
Yeah. Oh, I love these. Okay.
So it's a bad review of a classic.
It's a bad review of a classic. Some of them are, I'd say, more easy gettable than the others. But yes, I'll read the review. So they're all 1 star.
Okay.
So 1 star, boring. This book is very tiresome. Much dialogue and very little action. Too much love, not enough Jesus. I don't know what they mean.
Is it the Bible?
Is it the Bible?
Is it the Bible?
It's not the Bible.
There's not a lot of dialogue in the Bible, actually. Well, there's a fair amount of dialogue in the Bible. Not enough Jesus.
I don't think this one gives away enough to be able to get it, but I quite like the too much love, not enough Jesus line.
Yeah,
I think that's a t-shirt slogan, that, isn't it?
Oh, is it something like the Thornbirds? because that's about a priest and a romance, but he should really be concentrating on Jesus more than he does in that book. I can't help but feel. But are these crime novels, by the way?
No, just
no, they're not
classics.
necessarily crime novels.
Just
really,
under,
really
under
famous.
I
famous,
think
right.
there's got to be nuns involved, maybe, or I don't know. I might be barking up the wrong.
You don't think he's read it?
So maybe he just goes into every book expecting lots of Jesus. Not enough Jesus is his default position.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, no, you've got to fox me. You fox me. Which one is it?
Pride and Prejudice.
Is there not enough Jesus in Pride and Prejudice? Yes, no, that's fair enough, because there is a vicar. There is a vicar in Pride and Prejudice, and clearly he was, he should have been given a more central role.
Well, yeah, I mean, historically, it's been a long-standing complaint about Pride and Prejudice, hasn't it? That there's a void of Jesus in that book.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So that's first one. Second one, 1 star, hard to read. This is a tough book to read unless you understand several languages and are on LSD. I may have 30 or 40 more years to live, so I might get through it.
So it's a big book, I'm guessing.
A big book, yes.
It's not War and Peace, because that's boring. Lots of languages.
I think traditionally it's like one of the hard.
Yeah, is it Ulysses?
It is Ulysses. Incredible, well done.
Amazing performance.
And the final, there's one more after this which doesn't offer any clues, but it made me laugh a lot. So this is the final one where there might be a clue. So 1 star. It starts off then have fun reading about an old guy who is very angry. If I could give this book 0 stars, I would. This is a poorly written classic that doesn't deserve the time to be read. If you don't take my advice, then have fun reading about an old guy who is very angry at a fish.
Oh, it's the Moby Dick.
It's not.
Is it not Moby Dick?
When I read it, I thought it was going to be, but it's not.
Well, it's not. Well, the whale is a fish, but then, I wasn't assuming that he was being necessarily accurate in
it was a fine assumption.
Analysis. A fish, an old man who's very angry at a fish.
Is it Old Man and the Sea?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's not angry at the fish. He's angry at the sea.
Yeah. This is the theme. They're missing the point.
The fish is in the sea. Poor fish. I mean, I'm sometimes in places that people are angry about, but it's not, that's not my fault. Excellent. Okay.
Yeah. Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea. And then this is the final one, which offers no clue, but I love it. 1 star. This book was not my choice. Book club. I did not finish the book. I did not attend the book club that evening because I had conflicting things to go to.
So this person gave 1 star.
1 star
for those reasons.
Because she was busy that night.
Oh my goodness! Book club choices can be tricky, but it's a classic, isn't it? It's really hard to know his conflicting things.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. You'd cancel your arrangements to.
There was an amazing one for Lord of the Flies, which was long, so I didn't pick it.
Not enough Jesus. I mean, come on.
It went something along the lines of there were no flies in this book. And if you're a fly lover like me, that was very disappointing.
Yeah.
The one that they didn't have time to read because they were busy was The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh. Excellent. I'd love to hear what Oscar Wilde would say about that. I think he might have a pithy response.
Yes, quite possibly.
I quite like they had conflicting engagements. It does sound like a thing that Oscar might have had,
Yeah, I think Oscar might have approved of this. Actually,
yes.
Because he'd read his own book.
Excellent. What a great thing. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sarah. What are you reading at the moment?
What am I reading at the moment? I'm reading Fiona Cummings' new book. Called
Cool.
Into the Dark,
Nice.
which is fantastic. And lined up, I have William Shaw's new book, Dead Rich, which is sort of a super yacht murder on the high seas. And I'm hoping that it might have more than a whiff. Yeah, that's the one. I'm hoping it might have more than a whiff of sort of Succession madness about it, because like a lot of people, my life has been completely sort of void of all meaning since the season finale of Succession on Monday.
I have seen a few things, and it's one of those things I really want to watch, but I know that it will dominate me. It will absolutely dominate me.
Yeah, but it's worth it. You learn, think of it as a work, because you learn a lot about plotting and writing and character arcs. That's the way you
crack the code.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I'm allowed to watch it now. Chris, what are you reading?
I am reading Jack Jordan's Do No Harm, which I think is out in June. I left it in work yesterday and I was gutted because I couldn't read it last night, and I was literally like, I left it, every chapter's a cliffhanger, and it's just so good, and I was gutted. And I finally got it again. So I'm up to, I think I only started it on Saturday. I'm a pretty slow reader, but I'm on like page 350. Like, I cannot put it down. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
it's really good.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. What about you?
Excuse me. I am reading. Why am I speaking like that? Sorry, I got.
It's going to be profound.
A minor. Tickling me throat. It's not the thing. I did a lateral flow test today, so it's not that.
I think on Zoom we're safe, Rob.
Yeah.
Without worry. Even if it's sneeze, I
felt so obliged to point it out. You know. I'm reading Dead End Street by Trevor Wood, which is the final installment in the. I don't know whether it's called the Jimmy Mullen series or the Street series. I'll have to ask him. But it's just fabulous, and I think I'm going to cry. I think it's going to make me cry. So but it's beautiful, and I think as a trilogy, this is going to really. I think calling it here, you know, as sad as I am, because he's made it very clear that this is the final one. Yeah. As sad as I am that we're not going to have any more books about this brilliant world that he's created there. One, I'm really excited to see what he goes and does next. Two, I'm in that thing where it's kind of got a perfect beginning, middle, and end to it. And so it's a bittersweet thing, mostly sweet. Yeah.
What a nice way to end it. And one final question, Sarah. I mean, it's been a pretty great year for books. Do you have a standout for your book of the year?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult one, isn't it? There's been so many that I've enjoyed. The one that springs to mind most immediately, actually 3 of them leapt into my mind. One was Erin Kelly's Watch Her Fall, a ballet thriller, which was just fantastic, with a really, really good twist in it, appropriately enough for a dance thriller. And Megan Abbott wrote a ballet thriller this year as well called The Turnout, which is, I would say, probably not a crime thriller, but it's a fantastically written book, and I really enjoyed it. But I think the one that will stay with me the longest, I think, is Laura Littman's Dream Girl, which is a kind of like, it's got a kind of misery vibe going on in it. It's got a fantastic narrative conceit in it. It's, partly about a writer who's bedbound due to an accident in his apartment in Baltimore, that he's been forced to take to return. One of those being forced to return to your hometown, even though you've outgrown it and thought you would never come back. One of the. But it's it's very twisted. It's very different to a lot of the other things that Laura's written, but it's got that whole noirish vibe to it that she writes so well. It's got that real, and the way she writes the man, the hero in it, or anti-hero in it, is particularly impressive. So that's a long choice, a list of choices, and there were many more I absolutely loved. I really like Will Dean's Last Thing to Burn. Yes. Fantastic. Devoured that in about 3 days. Yes. So but you should never ask an author what their favourite books are. You'll need another half hour for the show. So.
And also, I'll need my wallet extending because I've just added Laura Littman's to the thing now. So
Notes being made here as well.
Yeah. Sarah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on tonight.
Yeah, thanks for everything, Sarah.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. Really enjoyed it, guys. Thank you.
Well, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Yes. And you too.
Thank
you.
And
see you online, I guess.
Yes. Oh, we're back to that, are we? Yes, we are. We're all back to that. Cool.
Brilliant.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
How are you?
How's it going?
It's
All
going
right.
good. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. It's been a while.
It has. It has.
Are you drinking champagne for the special occasion?
I just drinking prosecco. It's what we drink after 7 here. Yeah.
Oh, Matt, thanks for joining us tonight, Will. How are things with you, mate? Are you all okay?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I've just been putting up some Christmas lights out in the garden and, you know, trying to feel festive and all that. Yeah.
And Mr. Will Carver, you're here for a very special reason, aren't you?
Well, so I hear. Yes. Yes.
So last year we had the bright idea to do a Book of the Year award, in which Mr. Chris Whitaker took it home, and rightfully so, I think, last year. And this year, it's very much down to the readers or the listeners of our podcast. So, Mr. Will Carver, you are the winner of the 2021 Book of the Year for Psychopaths Anonymous.
Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
Rightly or wrongly.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I mean, you know, my Twitter bio says award-losing writer, because I tend to lose everything I'm up for. So, I've still lost more than I've won, so I might leave that for a bit. I feel bad for you guys because you've got like a 100% success rate of predicting the Theakston prize winner, and I've gone and screwed it up now.
I'd love it if we became the new benchmark, you know, the new sort of barometer of opinion in the industry.
You're like the Golden Globes before the Oscars.
Yes,
yeah. We've got a good idea of
who's I hope you book your weekend ready for Harrogate next year, man. Then in which case.
Oh yeah, well of course, yes. I've never been on the Thursday before, so
and spare some room for that great big barrel thing. That,
yes.
Yeah.
It's the check. I only want the check.
Wait, there's a check.
Now, unfortunately, the award isn't ready yet, but Sean will get it to you when it arrives. And the good thing about it is it's made of, I think, pure resin. So if you don't win the barrel, at least you can go around clubbing people with it.
Oh, good, yeah. So it's not just a doll super glued to a bit of wood or something. That's great.
While you're here, please could you tell us a little bit about Psychopaths Anonymous?
Could I? Yes. Wouldn't it be good if I was prepared for that? Right. What is it? Essentially, it is well, you know, my publisher says it is the book without a hook that shouldn't work but does. I mean, there's no kind of catchy one-line thing about Psychopaths Anonymous. It's basically a character study of this female psychopath, Maeve. She's an alcoholic who goes to AA meetings, not because she wants to quit, because she likes to view other people's misery, and she decides to set up a group for people who are more like her, because she doesn't consider herself an alcoholic. She sets up a group called Psychopaths Anonymous for nutters, and yeah, I mean, and you know, what could go wrong with that?
The cover art for this was something else. You know, when the little poster with the little, it was superb.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take credit for that, but it was my idea. Yeah.
Was it? Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
We had a lot of ideas, and that was just. But the guy who does the cover is so good. Like,
yes.
I did throw a few ideas, but that was the one I liked. The idea of kind of ripping those tags off, like they do in America, you know. And,
yeah. It indelibly sold the idea of the book.
Yeah.
You know, like immediately. You know, it's super stuff. Super stuff.
No hook, but a great cover.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, judge it by its cover, please. It's all downhill from there.
Yeah, I loved it. We were talking before about books taken, like you can remember where you were when you've read a certain book or whatever. And I read Psychopaths Anonymous when I had a spare day where my children were childminders, my wife, I took for her birthday to a fabric shop and literally said, spend as much time as you want. And I went to a cafe and read it. So it's got, as well as being a fantastic book, it's got great memories of a day where I literally had no responsibility. So
that's a long time in a fabric shop.
It is, and she spent a shit ton of money, but I got to read a good book out of it, so I'm not complaining.
And the really nice sort of symmetry of this is when we first spoke to you, Will, this was like an idea, wasn't it? And it's come full circle, and here you are picking up the acclaimed award for
I know, the barometer of success. Yeah, I guess. I think because I think so many books in advance and I link them all together, I've probably mentioned 8 ideas that I've got that will show up at some point. So, yeah, God.
You are a prolific man as well. Like, you are firing them out all over the place.
Well, I've got a bit of freedom to do that at the moment, and I've got enough kind of ideas and books in cupboards that I'd forgotten about in shoe boxes and things that are half eaten that I'll rewrite. So, yeah, and obviously Arenda just they're like, go on. I mean, their next one is batshit. I don't know. It is either gonna kill me. I have to go back to selling laptops. Who knows? Or maybe the 2 this year will get me through another year of crap.
You tell us a little bit about it, because you've shared the title on Twitter, I think.
Yes. What, the Dave's Next Door?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, God.
This is it here. It's here. I'm just going through it now. Essentially, I haven't really kind of got my my elevator pitch down, but essentially, it's 5 different stories. So one is an old man who tries to kill himself because he misses his wife, but it doesn't quite work, and his neighbours tell him that he has died, even though he hasn't. Then there's a sportsman who breaks his leg, goes to hospital, and he wakes up and he sees everything in black and white apart from this nurse that works there who's in complete colour. Then you get her story as well. And then there are the Daves next door, where the 2 Daves who kind of share a brain tumour between them. And then the last one is this one guy who he's riding around on the Circle Line all day, and he doesn't know whether he is God, a suicide bomber, or the narrator of a Will Carver novel. So, and all the stories come together at the end and make sense. They sound completely kind of disparate, but they do.
Oh my God, that sounds incredible.
Indelibly Carver, indelibly brilliant. Again, wow, what a man.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's done. I haven't had anyone read it yet, though. So I mean, it could be crap, but I'm going to send it off in the next couple of days, and then I'm going to start the next Hinton Hollow book, Hinton Hollow Revenge Trip, which is
whoa.
Yeah, so I'm going to start that next week, I guess.
And will those be your next 2, do you reckon?
Yeah, 2 next year. So 1 in July, and then hopefully 1 in November again.
Absolutely stunning stuff. Congratulations on everything this year, man. Stunning output. And as it happens, I'm still getting over Hinton Hollow. So when you mentioned, I'm still processing it.
I tell you now, there are times when I'm alone, in my car, or I wake up in the middle of the night and I still think about that meat room in your book. Bloody just popped into my head, the meat room. I'm like, oh God.
You coined that phrase as well.
That's what you called it in the book, did
I call it a meat room? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
Because obviously writing that book, it was an outer body experience. How grotty can we make this?
Yeah. Well, now I don't know if you did or I just called it that. I don't know.
I remember you messaging me like, I've just seen the meat room.
Yeah. Right.
But again, amazing stuff this year, mate. And it sounds like more amazing stuff next year. Can't wait. What a ride. Amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
And before you leave us, Will, books of the year, any that stood out to you?
Oh God, you know what? I've been very busy this year with books and other projects that I can't talk about yet, and I haven't read as much as I'd like to. But I did read the Joseph Knox book, True Crime Story, and I did enjoy that. But I think, you're from your stable, Steve.
Oh, he's a dude, isn't honestly.
What's the one with the orange cover?
Craven and Dime.
Yeah. Is it Alfredo
The second one. Second one.
What's that?
With a gun to his head.
Yeah, I loved
The
it.
cockroach.
I loved it. Yeah, that's right. And he's got all the
Yeah, the OCD
1, 2, 3,
stuff.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
I can't think now. Yeah, I really love the way he writes. I think he's great. I haven't read the new one yet, though I do have it. But God, what else have I read?
Two good choices.
I've got loads. I can't remember back. I read something at the beginning of the year that I really liked as well, but I have to go back through my Instagram and see what I've read, because I've forgotten. I've been sent some really great ones recently, though. I've got the new Simona Buchholz one.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that I get that nice and early as well. That's
awesome.
Such a treat every year. Yeah.
We were having a little chat off air about our shouts, weren't we, Chris? Anything you want to shout out yourself?
Psychopaths Anonymous was on there.
It's a good
I
one.
really liked A Man Named Doll by Jonathan Ames, who he was new to me this year, but it was like a PI novel, but it was so strange, and it was class. And then I went back and read other stuff that he'd done, and it was great. So I really liked that. Right to Kill by John Barlow was great. That was one that stood out. I think Vine Street by Don.
I was about to say that's the one I really want to read it. Yeah.
That's the one that I think, because big books tend to put me off, because I think that's like a commitment. And it's nearly 600 pages, I think, but I whizzed through it, and it had everything. So
600 pages.
Yeah, but
that's got audiobook written all over it for me. I like him. That.
I would echo Vine Street as well. If I could throw into this mix, The Perfect Lie by Joe Spain, I really like that too. Dark Sky by CJ Box. I just love that series. It's just every year we'll probably find that at the top of the tree. And I really like This Is Not Crime, but can I say it? The Last Bear by Hannah Gold. It's essentially a children's book about bear conservation. And it just really polar bear conservation. It just really nailed me. So it's an absolute beaut. And Bad Apples by Will Dean. But the moment that had me like jumping up on my chair this year was the end of our very own Chris McDonald's Erica Piper trilogy. That with Roses for the Dead. That last scene, there was a trickle down my face.
You made me cry in the second one. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, you sicker. Yeah. But what about this Razor Blade Tears? I haven't read that yet, obviously.
Oh no, I've not read that yet either.
No, I haven't.
But if we're looking at, this is not going to predict the Theekson thing this year. I think that and True Crime Story are the two that are going to be. Not that it is predictable. I'm just saying that, but it will definitely be between those two, and maybe that Vine Street as well. I think people are digging that. Oh, and I also want to read The Art of Death as well.
There's never enough time.
David Fennell. Yeah, I really want to read that. Yeah.
There's
so many.
There's so much great stuff out there. And like that's such a nice way of capping off the year, celebrating one great book to celebrate more great books. And how lovely. Isn't life wonderful?
Isn't it?
Isn't it just? He says with a Prosecco in hand.
It's after 7.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Will, to accept your non-award yet, but it will be there.
I will. I'll look in the post for my wooden doll. I'm looking.
I'm gonna make sure it's one of the trolls from the Will Dean books. Like a troll with like weasel's lips sewn on.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
If that's not under the Carver Christmas tree this year, then
It's done.
And congrats on another amazing year, Will, and an amazing book in Psychopaths Anonymous. And have a great Christmas and New Year.
Yeah, we'll see each other in the new year, I'm sure.
Yeah,
surely will.
Yes. All right.
Goodbye, Will.
Cheers.
Ciao, fellas. Bye.
And I guess, Rob, we should say thank you to the listeners. And
well, let's do that. Yeah.
For everyone who has tuned in or said nice things or asked questions to the authors, and a massive thank you to all the authors that have been on this year. The support has been incredible.
It's been unreal, hasn't it? I want to mention Sean in this as well for his tireless work, because he's sadly had internet outages tonight, which means he can't be with us. And we are, all at the mercy of technology always. But the support we get from everyone in the industry is just unbelievable, and it means we can have these great nights where we've had, Sarah Hilary and Will Carver on with us, and we've had a blast and a laugh, and it's just been loads of fun.
Yeah. I think back to the support we had for our festival, the people that said yes to that, and the people that have said yes for the next one and stuff. I think, it's a cool place. It's a cool community, I think, and a very supportive one. So yes,
it really is. Yeah, thank you, absolutely everyone, authors, readers, bloggers, publishing people, everybody, and thank you, Chris.
And thank you, Rob. What a nice way to sign off.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, we love you, Sean.
We love you, Sean. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is a tale of the supernatural.
The Tapes, a podcast of the uncanny.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Join me, host Christopher Goldie, and guests as we discuss the best in unsettling television and film.
Who is this? Who is coming?
Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search for @TheTapesPod, part of the Pod Dojo Network.